The first official reviews have come out for Denis Villeneuve's Dune, and so far, it is being hailed as a cinematic masterpiece from the filmmaker. There have been lots of reactions coming out of the world premiere of the film at Venice International Film Festival, and I'm going to be breaking down all of it in this video. But before I get into it, if you want to see much more videos on Dune leading up to its release date, then don't forget to support this video by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. Also, feel free to check me out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Instagram at Cortex Videos, which is all linked in the description below. But without further ado, let's discuss the official reviews and reactions for Dune 2021. So the reviews for Denis Villeneuve's Dune are extremely positive, and there are many points that they stress on in regards to what they liked and also what they thought could have been better. Now, of course, it's key to stress that the only review that matters is your own, but reviews can serve as a good method of hype that, let's be honest, for the film to be successful and a sequel to be greenlit is needed. But what are the critical reviews saying, and what are the points that they bring up? Well, there are a lot of positive reviews and multiple reactions that claim the film is a science fiction masterpiece, and the adaptation is one that we have always wanted. Eric Eisenberg from Cinema Blend says that Denis Villeneuve's movie is the film interpretation that fans have been waiting to see for decades, along with Ben Travis of Empire magazine adding that, for science fiction devotees, especially those who have long worshipped Frank Herbert's dense tone, Villeneuve's Dune is the adaptation you always dreamed of. It's especially great to know that what people considered as a book, which was once unfilmable, is now being considered a cinematic spectacle that brings the adaptation to life in such a perfect way. Jimmy O from Joblo said that it honours the source material in the most satisfying way possible. Dune 2021 is a modern day work of art. And the way this was going to be tackled successfully was, of course, bridging the gap between blockbuster and independent film techniques. Zan Brooks of The Guardian highlights that Dune is the missing link bridging the multiplex and the art house, ending with the phrase, "Good heavens, what a film." This is something that in particular I found exciting to read, because one thing I've always loved about the work of Villeneuve and, say, Christopher Nolan is that for the most part they do a great job of balancing the blockbuster and the indie approach. To know that Dune is probably going in this route is something that is awesome to hear, because it's the way I personally pictured a good adaptation. You've got to relate to general audiences, but then also challenge them if you want to create something that is new and memorable. And by the sounds of it, Dune does just that. The critics also add to it being a successful adaptation, with Jimmy O also saying, "This first chapter explores a very complex and detailed story with clarity and style. More importantly, it does so without sacrificing the impressive detail of Frank Herbert's original vision." Eric Eisenberg further states that Denis Villeneuve and his collaborators have cracked the code with their approach, extraordinary in its ability to directly translate the source material across mediums without compromise. However, Justin Chang of the LA Times said that a more significant causality is the book's layered interiority, its skill at turning unspoken perceptions and motives into drama. The writers have managed this material without mastering it. And there are a few reviewers that have pointed that out, but of course, when being able to manage something that is so packed and dense, you are always going to have to sacrifice certain elements. But for the most part, reviewers say it is a very satisfying adaptation of Herbert's work, which is of course a big thing that us book readers want to hear. But if you haven't read Dune, is it okay to go into this film if you haven't? Well, according to many, this is again another strong success of Villeneuve's adaptation. Rodrigo Perez of The Playlist says that thankfully Dune isn't particularly hard to follow, and Ben Travis states that though there's plenty to establish, Villeneuve makes surprisingly light work of it all. Dune is never as formidable as it threatens to be. So hopefully, based on these statements, Dune is an adaptation that will satisfy the range of viewers with its approach and adaptation of the material. So how is Villeneuve as a director in regards to adapting the film? How does it compare to his other work, and is it reminiscent of anything else? Justin Chang says that Villeneuve's true talent is less in the staging of violence than in the queasy anticipation of it. That gift serves him well enough in Dune. Like Blade Runner 2049 and especially Arrival, Dune is another unusually philosophical speculative fiction that ponders the difficulties of language and coexistence. Perez adds by stating, "It's an art house blockbuster in the vein of his Blade Runner 2049, but even less concerned with commercial appeal, which is admirably bold." This seems less in line with what other people have said, but I guess the good thing coming out of these reviews is that everyone is impressed in different ways and with varied aspects of it. Jimmy O also mentioned that most like the haunting Blade Runner 2049, the director has taken the time to explore numerous characters without sacrificing the main story and themes. Richard Trenholm of CNET also shared his thoughts in that, if you loved Arrival and Blade Runner 2049, then Dune is perhaps Denis Villeneuve at his Villeneuviest. And when it comes to if it is reminiscent of anything else, there are some interesting comments being made. Steve Pond from The Wrap weighs in by saying, "Think of it as Game of Thrones in space, or Star Wars if it never got off of Tatooine." Now, of course, many of us who have read the book know that Dune very much inspired elements of Star Wars and other big-name properties, but I think the general consensus is pointing out that when it comes to certain aspects, Dune has captured that level of fascination in its elements just for an adult audience in today's modern world. And to be honest, this is always a great thing to hear in a landscape that is full of movies we have seen so many times before. Rodrigo Perez states that arguably many of its elements are all things that Star Wars features to, but in Dune's case, it's just much more dense, sophisticated, and less childlike. Ben Travis also mentions that Dune feels more reminiscent of The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and Jimmy O adds that much like the semi-recent classic, Peter Jackson's The Fellowship of the Ring, this is only the beginning of the story, and Denis Villeneuve has created one of the best fantasy features since Peter Jackson's journey to Middle-earth. But then again, other reviews like that of the Irish Times and io9.com bring up that historical comparisons are of no use. None of us has been anywhere like this before. It sets a new standard for modern sci-fi epics. So what we learn from this is that there is a huge sense amongst those who've seen Dune that this is the kind of film that is going to be making the audience want the sequel so badly, and of course, it would be such a shame if we didn't get it. The HBO Max release, in my opinion, is definitely going to hurt it, but I just hope that it doesn't completely bomb and we do get a sequel. Like I said in other videos, anything around $350 to $400 million is probably enough to greenlight a sequel, but we'll only know when the film does come out over the next month. The last few points to mention in regards to the reviews is that there have been heaps of praise for the production aspects, including the visuals, sound, and across-the-board performances. Roger Friedman of Showbiz 411 said that cinematographer Greg Fraser has outdone himself from frame to frame, set piece to set piece, creating jaw-dropping pieces of art that are impressionistic, sensational, and otherworldly. Justin Chang and Eric Eisenberg also returned to the conversation, stating that Dune is a symphony for the ears as well as a feast for the eyes, and that Dune is also an auditory journey, not only featuring enveloping sound editing, but one of the best scores Hans Zimmer has ever composed. And I must say, having listened to all of the sketchbook for Dune by Hans Zimmer a few days back, the composer is definitely on the verge of releasing one of his greatest scores. It's original, alien, and inspired all at the same time, really capturing the sense that we have been taken to a new and iconic science fiction world. As an end quote on the film and cast, Chang and Eisenberg also mention that as a visual and visceral experience, Dune is undeniably transporting. As a spectacle for the mind and heart, it never quite leaves Earth behind. Everyone flawlessly gets at the core of who they are playing. Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, and Oscar Isaac all do well in leading the cast, and they are all phenomenal. I mean, I expected some great performances across the board, so it's good to hopefully know that they have all brought something to all of the classic characters from the novel that we know and love. But overall, the reviews for the most part are heaping praise for Villeneuve's new adaptation, and that it's potentially the start of something really special. It's going to be interesting to see what most of the general audience think when the film is released, and whether they consider it as another masterpiece by the filmmaker, and hopefully if this happens, the word of mouth will get more people into cinemas to see this adaptation. We can only hope, but I must say that Warner Brothers have definitely done a better job of the marketing in the recent months. Let's hope it transpires into a decent theatrical run at the box office. But they were the first official reviews for Denis Villeneuve's Dune. As I said, at the end of the day, everyone's individual reaction is the most important, and a review aggregator or score shouldn't really change that. But there's nothing wrong with hype, especially for a film that needs to do well at the box office in order to warrant a part 2. A lot of the reviews have also stressed on this, saying that the movie makes you want to see the next chapter, so in my opinion, all of the hype from the reactions is definitely something that's worthwhile. But again, nobody should let the hype affect what they think of a particular movie. Let me know down below in the comment section what you personally think towards the reviews and reactions, alongside whether it gets you even more hyped for the release of the film over the next few months. For more videos surrounding Dune leading up to its release, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. I will be continuing to cover news and topics for Dune, alongside continuing my Road to Dune series every week, so look out for all of these uploads. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.